All right, everybody, man. This is Coach Bay here. I want to thank everybody for coming in. Today, man, we're going to talk about getting outside of our own head. And trust me, I know that can be a very complex topic because getting outside of your own head, the racket that can go on inside of your own head uh, in a daily, man, and in a nightly when you're trying to rest, when you're trying to get some sleep, when you're in the daytime, when you're trying to focus, you're trying to get something done, can be crazy. And silencing that noise can be even crazier as far as the challenge, especially if you have no idea how to tame the noise. First and foremost, we did this lesson first for just individual people. And then people came to us like, hey, Coach Bay, it is even crazier, which we knew it is even crazier when you add on to the voices that of being a parent, that of being a business professional, that of being, that of being a boss, as far as your job is concerned, that of just being a good wife or husband, whatever your role is in life, and we have many, it can be quite the work with handling all those things, prioritizing all those things, dealing with all those things inside the mind, and being able to handle the stress of all those things, which is to a degree where the voices come from. So again, I'm Coach Bay. We're going to talk about uh, getting outside of our own head. This video is actually called The Way Out. Getting outside of our own head and quieting the noise in our own minds. And in my educated opinion, when you talk about quieting the noise in our own minds, we talk about a different kind of discipline. We talk about discipline, but we talk about a different kind of discipline. We talk about uh, a mental discipline, a discipline that I discuss in the five in the five steps of overcoming fear and doubt. When we talk about these voices in our mind that are in our minds when we are trying to sleep, they're in our minds when we're trying to work, they're in our minds when we're in the park, they're in our minds when we're in the kitchen, they're in our minds everywhere. So and trust me, I understand, and that's the reason we're doing the video. We understand that noise can be stressful. That noise, those voices, that noise can be overbearing at times. That noise is actually a noise that, if not quieted for some people, if not controlled and disciplined, can take them to different places. So, I am Life Coach Johnson Bay, so we're going to talk about it. Uh, Especially again, this one here is for professionals because we're professionals. And I call mothers professionals, fathers professionals because there is so much more noise. The more responsibility, the more things going on in your life, it just adds on to the noise. So that's so much more noise added. So when we talk about uh, quieting the noise, well, just imagine this: inside of a bubble, and that bubble is your brain. Inside of that bubble, there's a million and one things taking place. There's a million and one thoughts going around in this bubble because we have a million and one things going on in our life. So these million and one things that are going on in that bubble, first of all, when we're dealing with the noise, we want to the goal is to quiet the noise. So what do? Initially, we want to get rid of some of the things that's even running around in that bubble, some of the thoughts that's even running around in that bubble. What do I mean by that? I mean, when we talk about the five steps to overcoming fear and doubt, you hear me talk about a book that I've read, a man that I respect, a man that I've studied, a great man in my opinion, and that is Stephen Covey, the author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Things, as well as the 8 Habit. And he talks about the circle of influence. Well, all this chatter in our mind has to do with the things that we're dealing with in our lives. So when we talk about the things that we're dealing with in our lives, let's look at some of those things. Let's look and see if those things that we're dealing with, all of these things, is there something that I can subtract from that? Is there something that I can pull from that circle of influence this circle. We got things in that circle of influence. We've got things in that circle of influence that are dear to us, that we have concern about, that are important to us, that we care about. All these things are in our circle of influence, right? Now, that circle of influence is also that chatter in our minds, right? All those things inside there. So first of all, we're going to talk about making a decision. That's the first step to the 5 steps of overcoming fear and doubt. Making a decision. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a decision to make attempts to quiet the chatter, to become stronger than the chatter. And you notice the terms that I'm using have to do with how we're going to quiet the chatter. Discipline is one of those things. First of all, we're going to get some of the things out of our circle of influence, out of our minds, right? We're going to quiet some of those voices by removing some of them. So first of all, I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to jot down. I want you to really think about this. I want you to really think about this. You may have to send me an email. I want you to jot down things in your life, and you have to be totally honest with this. You have to be totally honest with this. I want you to jot down things, people, situations in your life that you are dealing with, that you have taken on that are really not your own. And I'm not. We're not being selfish here. We're not being mean. We're prioritizing. We're prioritizing, right? We're putting ourselves first. When we put ourselves first, we get ourselves together, we strengthen ourselves. Charity starts at home before it's spread abroad. Then we begin to reach out to spread charity amongst our brethren, amongst the community. First it's our home, first it's us, then it's our home, then it's the community. So when we talk about that circle of influence, that chatter inside our brains, let's sit down and write down anything or any situation that is not our own, that we have taken on. And we have to be honest about it, because some things we want to take on. Let's just be honest. Some things we want to take on, some things we feel we can take on, some things we feel that we ought to take on, and some things we feel guilty about, so we take on. But the thing is, all of those things are part of the chatter, the things that are not supposed to be in the circle of influence. And it's not just those things, but that's where we're going to start. So inside, we're going to sit down, we're going to write down things that we can take out of our circle of influence. We're going to talk about, we're going to write down voices that we can take out of the chatter, right? So whether that be a decision that we can put off that we really don't need to make right now, or whether that be a problem that we're having, something that we need to talk to the wife or the husband about, that is an unsolved issue that we need to deal with. Now we're talking about, I've gotten a little bit off the subject, we're talking about things that we don't need to deal with. It may be the neighbor's problem. It may be our sister's problem. It may be someone at the church's problem, someone at the community center. It may be a decision that you can make next year that you don't need right now. It may be a financial decision that you're talking about making right now that you just really can't afford, and you know that, and you're trying to stretch and strain and make it happen. I mean, anything that I can take off of my plate, that I can get out of this circle of influence, that I can get out of my brain, the chatter, we take that out, we lock that away. Now you say, Johnson Bay, give us an example. Well, for me, for instance, I got a neighbor who's working on his car. Now he doesn't have all the tools. He doesn't have all the tools. So he set a date, we talked, he grabbed me when I pulled in, he wants to work on his car. It's on the weekend, he wants to use some of my tools. So obviously I put that inside my circle of influence. This is something important to me. But it also becomes one of your stressors. I want you to understand, it also becomes a part of the chatter. It's a part of the voices, right? Because you're busy as a professional, you got things going on, you're leaving, you're coming, but now you have an obligation, right? So any responsibilities are part of that chatter, right? Now, we're responsible people, at least we try to be, right? So we don't want to overdo anything. That's one of the big things. We don't want to overfill our plate, and we have a bad thing with doing that, right? Because we can accomplish so much, and we know that. We have a problem with putting so many things on our plate and helping out so many people and dealing with so many situations, so many times that are not our situations to deal with, or not to be dealt with in that timing. Or now I'll bring this into focus, or decisions that we haven't made, discussions that we haven't had with our spouses, with our children, with individuals that we deal with in life, choices that we haven't made about careers, choices that we haven't made about kids. These are also part of the chatter, right? If these are things that we're dealing with right now in that moment in life, right? So even when we talk about decisions that need to be made that we put off, these decisions have to be made, right? Now, when we make those decisions, right, we make those decisions, what we gain control over that situation, right? Now, the after effect of that situation, what we think about is still going to be part of the chatter, quite possibly, but we are stronger, right? We are stronger, so we're able to look at that particular situation and hear that chatter and quiet it down a little bit quicker, push it to the side a little bit quicker, because we controlled that, we've dealt with that, we were disciplined, we've dealt with that issue, right? So really, we can take it out of our circle of influence. Unless it becomes a problem again, we'll put it back in, bring it back up. But right now, it's one thing that has gone out of our circle of influence, and we've taken it out. And that's another thing, a part of this. You know, you got to have the courage. You got to know to take things out of your circle of influence. And a lot of times, you got to have the courage, the know-how, the will to take them out of your circle of influence. I know mom, I know grandma, I know uncle, I know dad. A lot of times we want to do things, we want to help the kids, we want to help different people, and a lot of times it's not for us timely, maybe it's not for us spiritually, and a lot of times we bucket that because we're helpful people. But again, it becomes part of the chatter. It becomes part of the chatter. Things that we want to do and haven't done, becomes a crowded circle of influence. It becomes the voices, right? So in life, so what are we doing when we're trying to when we're the way out? What is the way out, Johnson Bay? The way out is discipline. The way out is carving up our character. The way out is to take the problems that we're dealing with in life and deal with them. Deal with them head on. Take problems that are not our own, right? Take some of the voices that are not our own issues, give those back, demand, state to self, and this is the first of this series, because this goes a lot deeper. We're going to state to self, hey, that problem's dealt with. I'm in control of that problem now. If it becomes a problem again, we'll bring it back up front, we'll bring it back to our circle of influence, and we'll deal with it. Now, I'm talking about alphas, male and female. I'm talking about professionals, right? This video here is actually for professionals because we have so much more on our plate, right? You know, I'm talking right now, I'm talking to my power couples. I'm talking to my power individuals. You know, I'm talking to my, 10s and 20s. You know, I'm talking about, man, my most powerful people out there, my strongest people out there. You know, I'm talking about my movers and shakers. I'm talking about my decision makers, my bosses out there. You know, when you got so much on your plate, right? You got so much on your plate. You know, when you're in the shower, the voices. When you're in the bed, the voices. When you're in the kitchen, the voices, right? You've got to deal with what's going on in your mind, right? The voices, different situations, and some of those, as we've said, we can get rid of by removing from the circle of influence, from those voices. Some of that we can get rid of, right? Some of that we can get rid of. And you say, well, babe, when I get rid of some of that, I'm gonna feel some type of way, you know, from handing back a problem that I want to deal with that was somebody else's at the church. And I tell you, well, you know what? And this is one thing that Coach Bay teaches: your peace, your preservation has to be first to you. Okay, it has to be first to you. God and your peace have to be first to you. It has to be first to you. That is my philosophy. God and your peace has to be first to you. Your peace of mind, your health, right? All of that is holistic. All of that comes with peace. your peace, your health, mental health, physical health, right? We understand that stress causes disease. We understand that it's stress that it wears on the body, right? So we are dealing with our circle of influence. We are dealing with our voices by becoming more disciplined, by becoming more asymmetrical, right? You know, if you will, we're stepping outside a lot of the foolishness. If we're not alpha, we're becoming alpha. We're checking out Coach Bay. We're life coaching with Coach Bay, and we're becoming alpha. We're learning to deal with, in a disciplined manner, the thoughts in our mind, the thoughts that are ours, the problems that are ours, the situations. We're learning to deal with those problems, deal with those voices, shut them down, at least curve them, get them under your control, get them more disciplined, be able to quiet them, right? And go on to the next thing, because so many times when we got those voices have us confused, those voices have us down, depressed, so many different things, so many mixed feelings. So, those voices can have you up, can have you happy. It just depends on what's going on, right? It just depends on what's going on. And a lot of times, and this will make no sense to you probably, but sometimes you can be happy because of those voices. And again, you were being nosy and were happy about something you seen that really didn't have anything to do with it. So again, that was really not something that was in your circle, but it was a voice that made you happy, because of something that you've seen. But we're talking about those negative voices. We're talking about getting control of those voices that drive us freaking crazy, right? So, first we're going to make, again, the 5 steps to overcoming fear and doubt. The first one being making a decision. So we make a decision that we're gonna quiet the noise. We'll make a decision that we're gonna become alpha male, alpha female. We make a decision that we're gonna become more disciplined, more asymmetrical. That means that we have a toolbox that we're able to take up to the workshop of the mind, the axe, and cut away naughty, ungainly, useless places, people, things, thoughts. Cut them away, right? Become more asymmetrical. That is becoming more in tune in our lives, becoming more in tune and alive in our goals, and becoming more in tune in everything around us, our families, right? When we cut away the naughty, ungainly, useless parts of our character, right? We become more into ourselves. We walk one step closer to God, right? When we start to cut away the naughty, ungainly, useless parts, right? It is time. It is time. Coach Bay is telling you it is time in life to become alpha. If you're not alpha, it is time to, if you're kappa, become bravo, go to B. It is time to advance, is my point. It is time to advance. All that old stuff, no more. It is time to advance. It is time to advance in our careers, in our lives, in our marriages. You can do this. You possess the power to do it, the will to do it. All that it is a lot of times guidance, the know-how to do it. Ignorance is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that you don't know. And so many of us didn't know until we were taught. Until we walked through life, until we experienced some things, right? So Coach Bay, and everybody knows, 5 or 6 certifications in fitness, life coach, specialist, brains contributor, top 10 men's in fitness, top 10 men health and fitness right now. But none of that happens. No top 10s in men health and fitness, no king and queen fitness virtual. None of that happens if I allow all the things in my past, right? All the voices, all the chatter to tell me what I couldn't do, to control me, to put me down. Right, I had to take control of those things. I had to show up, and I'll be honest with you. Coach Bay had to step back from a lot of people. I had to step back from a lot of people. I had to step back from family. I'm always going to be honest with you. A lot of times I had to step back from family because, your peace has to be paramount to everything going on first and foremost. It has to be the rock. Right? God and your peace has to be the rock that you build on. And from there, we'll build alpha male, we'll build bravo woman, we'll build alpha woman. From there, we'll build, what when you go into the book of James, when you count it all joy, and the character that comes from counting it all joy. We'll build that character. That's in the book of James in the opening, 1 through 3, I think, 1 through 5. We'll build that character. And we're not talking to any particular religion. I'm talking spirituality. I'm talking about putting God first. I'm talking about admitting that there is someone greater than ourselves, right? And then saying, I make a decision, man, to clear the chatter, to clean up my life, to go straight, to silence the noise, to be able to proceed through my life making choices in a healthy way, dealing with people in a healthy way in my life, being able to sleep, being able to rest, because we know the voices will keep you up at night. The voices will make you look at people a different way. In the 5 steps to overcoming fear and doubt, and check those out. It's on YouTube. It's on all platforms. 5 steps to overcoming fear and doubt. Coach Bay, we talk about sweeping around your own front door. The voices, again, the voices are your judgments. Your judgments, the way you look at people, the way you judge people. You judge people, look at people, you put those things in your mind, they become the voices. That's something that shouldn't even be in the circle of influence, the whole judgment, but we do it. We're not perfect. It becomes voices. Now we're laying down it. Oh, that girl, you can't stand her. I said, I can't stand the voices, what she did, all the voices, right? We are going to learn to control the voices, right? So first of all, we sweep around our own door. First of all, we stop, after we make a decision, we stop worrying about other people's, we stop judging other people when we have problems in our own lives. Let's stop judging people. Let's stop looking at people and taking on, you don't like the way they look or they act, and that comes to your circle of influence because it's in your mind now. Now it's the voices. You're sleeping with that, the written space in your mind. Let's get away from that. Let's get away from the judgments, right? Arranging our circle of influence. That is number 3. And we just talked about the circle of influence. Arranging our circle of influence. Let's look at our lives. Let's look at our circle of influence and let's say, what is it that we don't need here, or what is it that we do need here? What problem do we not need to deal with? What do I not need to deal with this year? All these things, all these problems in the ones that I do keep in the circle of influence, let's prioritize them and let's start dealing with them. Let's not put them off. They become powerful voices. Let's not put them off. Let's start dealing with them, right? In step 4, we talk about a soldier never knows his strength till he meets his foe. And you say, what do you mean by that, Johnson? Well, you are the soldier, and I say a soldier never knows his strength till he meets his foe, and by now you should have conquered many foes. You are the soldier, and foes are just what they are. Problems in life, different things that you need to overcome, challenges, right? And you never know the strength you have. For instance, I'll give you an instance. Now I'm talking to my recovering addicts, right? You never knew the power that you had until you got off of drugs, till you recovered. I'm talking to my cigarette smokers. Until you stopped smoking, you just knew then that you had an idea then, of the type of strength, the type of power that you have. You learned then that you were able to overcome great things, great mountains, right? That's what you learned when you finally stopped smoking. So a soldier never knows his strength till he meets his foe, right? And thought is developed by that strength, right? So we take that strength and we develop thought from it. What type of thoughts? Stronger thoughts, obviously, because we become stronger. We know what we can accomplish because we've conquered foes in our lives. When we conquer foes, we become stronger. You don't become weaker. You don't stay there. We have to have the courage to advance. You have to have the courage to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am advancing. You have to call it when you make the move, because sometimes We have so much doubt in our lives. Even when we advance, we don't want to call it. We don't take the credit for it. We need to take, when we move in increments, we need to take credit for it. When you move in increments, you need to take credit for it. When you do something positive, it is okay to take credit for it. You don't have to go running up the street, jumping down. It's important not to overdo it. It's important to recognize that you've done something positive and be happy about that. So in 5, it talks about living in consciousness, knowing and being. All of this applies to the voices. After we walk through the series, man, we'll be living in consciousness, knowing and being. We'll be able to silence those voices. So many of them will already be silenced. But life goes on, so we'll have different voices. We'll have different issues in our circle of influence. But we'll deal with those well, and you'll be able to deal with them strong. You'll be able to deal with them disciplined. Today was the first of the series. I'm glad you all crept in, man. I hope to see you all again with the next series. This is The Way Out, man. I am Coach Bay. Let me see what we got coming up, man. Rise is still on the calendar, man. Rise is still coming. No fret, man. Don't fret. Rise is still on the rise. You know what I mean? Still a shout out, man, to the Justin Dignity Center. Big things going on up there, man. Much respect. Shout out, man, to my bro over there, man, at Wars Politics, Brandon Ellington, man. And a shout out to all of y'all, man. A shout out to y'all for believing. You know what I mean? And if you don't believe, man, we're going to get you in a state of being to where you do believe. And once you start believing, we're going to get you in a state of being. We're going to stay in a state of being. And you'll understand that as we go along. To all of my people, man, all over the world, we thank you, man, for tuning in. I love you guys, man. This is Coach Bay. See you next time. Make sure you're checking out Brains Magazine, man. Checking out those articles. Peace.